Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations, once declared tolerance, intercultural dialogue, and respect for diversity are more essential than ever in a world where people are becoming more and more closely interconnected. I believe the film Speaking in Tongues was a really great example of how the world is changing and how the face of education and the culture of the United States as a whole really needs to recognize that the United States is a melting pot. So it addresses such issues as having a monolingual world, United States, and saying that that's the main language, that is the only language that should be spoken and taught in the United States. And then it also looks at the vantage point of individuals who realistically are not only European or not only of European descent, but contribute to our country, add to our country, and the importance of a global citizen, how we are outnumbered in comparison to the world. According to Speaking in Tongues, by 2025, a third of public school age children will not speak English by kindergarten. So what is the remedy for that? Do we keep fighting something that's happening, whether we like it or not? Or do we rise to the occasion, and do we create great opportunities for children who are our future, who have to come up with very real solutions for resources that are being used up? And we need to create individuals that can interconnect and work with each other in a respectful and meaningful way. Today, I submit to you, colleagues, different vantage points that I observed in the film. Some of the audiences that were addressed in the film are mainstream America, politicians and policymakers, and teachers and parents. That is what I observed. As far as mainstream America, I did like how the film opened with showing videos from white nationalists that have the sentiment that America should be, great and only one language in their assertion, and how that would be better, that this country was founded on whatever principle they were trying to discover and speak about, and just the racial and the ugly sentiment behind those things that I really feel come out of fear. If everyone is forced to speak one language, then minorities can't rise up and bind together and make true policy changes. If you force school children to only learn one track, if you disassociate children from their cultural ties and separate them from their families and the generations of people that worked hard to get to this country, then there is no sense of identity. They only have a loyalty and an allegiance to a country that they deem gave them everything without considering their ancestors and the people that worked hard to get them to the United States so that they could have opportunity. But opportunity is not meant to be gained at a sacrifice for your own internal cultural appreciation. So I really appreciated the thoughts and the things that they showed from mainstream America to show that there is an anti-minority sentiment in people learning more than one language. There is an anti-bilingual sentiment that is expressed by mainstream America that I feel like in El Paso we are at times protected from, because again, there is a large Hispanic population here. We're a frontier town. We're right on the bridge of Juarez, and so I think people forget how blessed we are in our city, that we don't have to always hear that. What I saw from politicians and policymakers, how at that time in the 90s, in the late 90s, they were trying to pass a proposition, I believe I saw it was Proposition 122, that was going to allow for California children to have the opportunity to become bilingual, to have school opportunities, to become, to go into Mandarin programs, Spanish programs. And I appreciated that they showed that political side of it, and that they also showed that I was reading the comments when the film was over, and that there was actually a repeal placed in the California government to take away that and to make it to where only English could be taught in the educational setting. So that was some of my wonderings that I felt post-film, like what progress had been made and what had been taken away in light of that. Teachers and parents were also a big part of it. The story that I felt most most impacted by, and the interviewer that, and I think they did that on purpose, was the case of Jason and his father of Jose. I really appreciated how they show the danger almost in a child becoming bilingual, but if they're not given that appreciation or that understanding for their own culture, how they can lose their L1, as Jason was doing. As his teacher said, she said that had he not been in that program, he would have lost his Spanish. He would have lost his academic ability to write in Spanish, and he would have lost just his social ability to speak in Spanish. And this is something that we see with Kelly's mother as well. She talks about how, as she was growing up, there was a sentiment by her family to learn English, but it was such a strong sentiment that she lost the Mandarin and she lost the Cantonese. So she wasn't even able to speak to her grandmother. And you see this with Kelly's cousins as well when they're at the dinner, where the cousin's saying, well, my children will be biracial, and I really would like them to be able to speak to my grandmother. And again, you see that sadness that comes between generations, because that communication isn't able to be had between the older and the younger generation. Perhaps some of that wisdom, perhaps some of that appreciation. So the story of Jose and his father Jason, I think it is very well articulated and kind of summed up in the void of the silence that happens between Jose when he's trying to take a picture of Jason and his friends at the graduation. He's moved to tears, and you see the son Jason just wanting to move on because he's a fifth grader, wanting to look for his friends and not understanding the power that is for his father as an immigrant to see his son graduating an American school and seeing the hope that the father has in him. So it was a beautiful moment, and I really appreciated the commentary that was presented from the teacher and the parent perspectives. I thought that was fantastic. In this slide, I wanted to present a basis of perspective. I really was trying to think of the motivations behind each member of these families and having their children in these programs. So obviously, Jason's father was an immigrant. He wants the best for his children. He wants the American dream for Jason. And I thought it was nice at the end how he said, Jason will never have to know what it is not to understand the people around you. He'll be able to communicate with everybody. And I thought that was really beautiful. Julian's family, I thought was really, I thought that they were inspirational too, but I don't feel like they were really talked about because perhaps they were white. They didn't feel that their story would be as impactful. But I really admire Julian's family too, because it would be much easier to say, well, we're white, we have privilege, we're okay, even though they don't say that. I mean, those are those implicit things that we know to be true sometimes. But they still wanted their child to learn a language. And I really was inspired by that young man, although he was more soft-spoken. The fact that he wanted to be an aeronautical engineer, the fact that he took a trip to China so that he could practice his Mandarin, just those rich cultural experiences that his program allowed him to have, and just knowing that in the future he'll probably be able to do a lot with that. I think he was one of the ones that I was most curious about at the end of the film. You know, what has he done? And did he move on to do something? Did he go into engineering, and does he work in other countries, and is he able to be kind of a representative of the United States and the changing face of culture? Kelly, I thought she was so sweet. Of course, her family wanted her. I think it was just more of her wanting her to have an appreciation for her culture. And then Darrell, I thought Darrell's mother was really touching. And again, it's what is said when is not is said. You know, Darrell lived in the projects. His mother, you know, she made it a point to say he was the only one in his neighborhood that attended that school. There were no other children in him. So for Darrell, I felt that his environment and his mother's motivation for giving him a program like that is that so he could stand out and so that he could have an opportunity. And she does say that. So I felt that those were the factors behind those children's families putting them in those programs. All the children came from varying socioeconomic backgrounds. So I thought, again, that was a really great testament to the power of a dual language immersion program, and one that is run strongly and well, because all of these children were reaping the same benefits regardless of color or creed in society. And I thought that that was really powerful. And yet again, another way of us affirming that these programs are important. Bilingualism is important. It makes you just a more well-rounded citizen. And it's absolutely essential that children have the opportunity to do this. Human rights. I just think from a perspective of as an educator and an American and you know, I was born in the United States, but I did have the opportunity to travel when I was younger. I thought human rights were important. Everybody should have the right to be understood. Everybody should have a voice. That's what makes America America. That's why people want to live here. And that's why people leave oppressive governments and countries to come and be in our society, because there is a sentiment of you matter, you can make a difference. So I thought it was really great how they showed the activist at the beginning and how he was really fighting so people understood that change, but having to fight the fear of others' preconceived notions of bilingualism must be a challenge. And I think as an ESL teacher, I continue to see those fears of people saying children have to be completely immersed. You can never translate for children. Just some of the schools of thought that are associated with dual language immersion that necessarily don't ring true in data. So I thought that those were really great points. And then again, there's that reiteration of a global citizen or a global learner. Like Darrell, when he was with his mother at the store and the lady said he could be the Chinese ambassador. Well, what an exciting idea. Why couldn't he be? And again, you know, just presenting those opportunities. And I thought that was really beautiful that they showed his mother explain that, and just the pride on her face associated with it. It was fantastic. If truth be told, this slide had me the most trepidatious. Personal supplication to administrators new to dual language immersion. I feel that just in general with any administrator, regardless of what they are overseeing department-wise, I feel like there needs to be an exchange of knowledge. If I know my administrator's goals and I know what they need from me, I can better make sure to strive that. And as an educator, I would never put myself in a position to think that I know more than my boss. I think there has to be a collaboration in motion so that everyone can be on the same page and ultimately so the children can benefit. So I love that about my current administrator. I feel like she's very good at collaborating, and she never makes it a point to act like she knows everything. She's learning, and she's very honest about that. And I like that because I'm learning. So there's that collaboration, and we can both discuss in a respectful way how we're going to help the kids. Cross-curricular communication. I think that there is a sentiment still, which is odd to me, where we think, okay, well, just because ESL's a thing, or ELLs or LEP or anything like that, any of those indicators that go with those populations, SPED, whatever, what have you, that we don't need to discuss the information with the other content areas. It is important that a history teacher knows second language learners' strategies. They need to know the language. They need to understand how to teach, because those are just good teaching practices. They're not ESL practices. They're good teaching practices. So as administrators, I would like to ask my administrators to communicate with their colleagues and to say, okay, but are we making sure that we're teaching the content in a way that's approachable for everybody? It's not translating, it's not watering it down, it's being teachers and being educators and scaffolding in a meaningful way that doesn't degrade our children, and it doesn't lower the affective filter so they don't feel like they matter on a campus. That's the saddest thing in the world. I always think it's really sad when I see my ESL students and they don't feel like they matter. They don't love learning. For them, they're really here sometimes because of their families, because their parents see it as a great opportunity, but they miss their people and they miss their country and they miss their friends. So they don't want to get involved sometimes. So it's, as an ESL teacher, we really have to pump them up. And I think administrators do too. They matter. They're a huge demographic, especially in El Paso and obviously throughout the United States if we look at the film. So I think that these children need to be more vested. I think there needs to be more accountability held and buy-in solicited from other content teachers, because these children are not a problem. These children are an opportunity for us to teach things and for us to learn as well. Also, there's a saying in Spanish that says, like, es mi mero mole, and I feel like administrators should have that perspective. If you are over it, there's so much going on, but you really need to know your stuff in regards to these kids, in regards to the legislation the funding, the allotments, the allowances that are created to give these children the best possible educational experience. So those were my insights on that. As again, I'm not a minister, so I would never perceive to tell anybody what to do. But in this forum, I know my opinion was solicited, and this is what I would ask of my administrators in a respectful way, that they share their knowledge with me, that they collaborate in a way that I can help them and they can help me, cross-curricular communication, that they're not just solely my kids, that there are kids, that there are students, that there's a community of educators bound together to help these populations of students, and that que sea su mero mole, that ESL education, that dual language immersion is that they understand that it is, that they can tell you things inside and outside about these programs that other people might not know. And that's what I had to say. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a lovely weekend.